Today is February 19th, 2014. The interview location is on Flowers Ridge Road in Buxton, North Carolina. My name is Sandy Jones Garrison, and I am interviewing Bruce Pritchard, a musician and a surfer, currently residing in Buxton, North Carolina with his wife Betty, along with their 8-year-old chocolate Labrador retrievers, Gonzo and Coco. Betty has agreed to be present during this interview and answer a few of my questions as well. Start with you, Bruce. So state your full name and
Where's the Bible?
and where you were born.
Bruce Miller Pritchard.
And can you spell Pritchard for me?
Pritchard.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Philadelphia. Never lived there.
Betty, please say your full name and where you were born.
Elizabeth Laura Pritchard, and I was born in Cape May County, New Jersey.
And where did the two of you live before you moved to Hatteras Island?
Cape May County, New Jersey.
Who made the decision to make the long trip from New Jersey to Hatteras? I'm assuming Buxton.
That's a gray area.
Okay. Was it Betty's decision or was it your decision to move?
I can tell you the story.
Okay.
We would come down every spring, every fall to go surfing. And one day I said, Bet, how would you like to retire here? And she had us at the real estate office that afternoon.
You came down here twice a year to surf. And you came down occasionally. And what did you do when he was out surfing?
I'm in charge of lunches and reading.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds perfect.
It's a big job.
She's a beach goer.
So what year did you decide to make that move?
2001. October 2001.
Just in time before, what was the end of the hurricane season?
Mm-hmm.
Did you move directly to Buxton, or that was your go-to place? And it.
Actually, when I said that to her, the plan was to get a piece of property to get a footprint.
Mm-hmm.
And we would build later on. We built right away.
What? Well, were you going to camp, or?
No, because as properties were going,
Mm-hmm.
this was the boom.
So let me ask Betty this question. How did you find the property?
What happened was when we were here in we were here in April, and Bruce said, how would I like to retire here? And my mother had been dying, and it was near the end of her life. She had been sick for 18 years. He knew that maybe a change would be good for me. I've only lived in 2 houses in my whole life, and he thought maybe a change would be good. And his suggestion was, how about if we retire here? And I grabbed a sale ad from a house over on North Tower Circle, and I took it home with me, and I also grabbed a real estate book. And the real estate books had come down pre-approved. That was in April. So in October of that year, of 01, we came down here, and he had already spoken to a real estate agent, and we came down. He knew how much money we had. We came down here pre-approved, and we went to picked up the real estate agent, and she showed us a couple properties, and they didn't do much for me. And when we turned onto Flowers Ridge Road, just as we turned off the Lighthouse Road, now remember, I've only lived in 2 houses in my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
As we turned onto the road, I said, oh, this feels like home. And before we got to the property, Bruce said, I forgot to tell you, there's a graveyard, on the property. And I said, doesn't make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It was a completely wooded lot, and we walked the lot, and I liked it. I really liked it. I looked at the graveyards out front, the names on the graveyard. It was an old lighthouse keeper. And Cheryl was leaving, so we said we'd get back to her. We were going to lunch. We went to lunch. We went down to the Lighthouse bookstore, and we opened up a book on lighthouses, and the page came open to the dead man in our front yard. And I said, I think we're buying a piece of property.
That was
in And,
Like a sign
oh, it's-
that you were meant, this was meant to be your location.
and we've tried to open that book. We bought the book. We can't open it to that page, but that day it just opened. Ezekiel said.
Fate and destiny.
Yeah.
I got more to that story.
Okay, you can take your turn.
A couple years ago, I did the genealogy of my family. And I grew up in Cape May. And I knew that my dad's family was from down here. Not here,
Mm-hmm.
from down south. And so I started digging into genealogy, and it turns out that our family settled Bertie County in the late 1600s. One of the original settlers in North Carolina.
And you didn't
And
know
I
that
never knew that.
until you moved here.
But wait
so
a
it was
minute.
kind of like a draw back
And
that
then
I never knew about.
the properties in Bertie County touch Perry's property.
Yes,
In Bertie
and I
County.
dug in further, and I found out my great grandparents. No, the original ones in the 1600s. They had a plot, and they had joined a plot that turned out to be the Perrys, who live right across the street. And next to that property was the Mizels, who are in George's family. So the three families from the 1600s ended up adjoining properties here in Buxton.
And you did not know that
Nope.
No.
when you bought this lot in
Think that
2001.
isn't creepy?
Then you're here to
Sorry.
stay, you guys. My next question is about your surfing. So you would come down here twice a year to surf, but where did you learn to surf?
Cape May, New Jersey.
And is that where everybody went in there to come down here to surf? I mean, how did you hear about this
Cape
park?
Hatteras is the mecca of East Coast surfing. Everybody comes to Cape Hatteras, north and south.
Mhm.
Just like a religious pilgrimage.
So you just got in your vehicle and put a tent in the back of your car?
No.
Or
Tent? No.
no? Oh, you're not a tent
No
camper?
mosquitoes, no air
Okay.
conditioner, no cable.
So right for the house? You rented a house or?
No, he used
Motels.
to come down with a friend, and they used to stay up in Nag's Head and drive down back and forth. And they'd stay up there. And then when
Don't know why.
I don't know why, we've never figured that out. And then when I started coming with them, we wound up staying. The very first time we stayed over what was called the Cape Pines, across the street from Connors, where we stayed. We never camped. He wanted to have TV. He wanted, there was never camping. We didn't do it many times. I didn't do it many times. He came down with friends and served. But they always stayed in motels. He's not a camper.
Was Connors even there?
Mm-hmm.
So Connors has been...
This was only in 1998, 97,
Okay.
99,
All right.
that sort of thing, yeah.
So you had a place to sleep, place to buy your groceries, things like that.
The Chinese restaurant was up in Avon. We were good.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And somebody always had a pizza.
Yeah. When you started coming down, Betty, did you stay... I mean, were you just doing long weekends, or really long weekends? You would make the drive all the way down here.
It's only 300 miles from one driveway to the other driveway.
That's about 6 hours. That's not
Well,
bad.
it's 5.5 hour drive time, and then you got an hour and a half on the ferry.
What were you saying about the ferry?
Well, there's a ferry in between Cape May and Lewis, Delaware, and that's the ferry that we had to ride. We rode it to the edge of Delaware, then rode the ferry to get to Cape May County where we lived, and we lived 6 miles from the ferry.
Oh.
So it was really, the trip went from one driveway in Cape May County to this driveway here was exactly 300 miles.
Okay. When you were surfing, are you allowed, is it a big secret, or are you allowed to say where the best surfing spots are?
It doesn't matter anymore because
It's changed.
it's all over the internet.
And it
Oh.
changes all the time too.
So where was your favorite place to surf when you came down in your earlier years?
Probably Lighthouse.
When the lighthouse was there? Lighthouse there.
That's what's still called the Lighthouse.
Okay.
That's right, you
The
were here.
Lighthouse Beach.
You were here the year that, you and Ed were down here the year they moved the lighthouse, remember? I forgot about that.
So, do you surf anywhere else now, or do you still surf at that same beach?
Remember, I'm the guy that goes south to the post office and north to Ace?
Yes.
No. Anywhere in here.
Okay, so you keep it very local.
Very local.
And when you first started coming down here to surf, did you see people, any stories, like tragedy stories, anybody getting, taken by the rip currents, or what did people do if they got into an emergency medical situation? Or,
I mean, that's everywhere. We grew up at the beach.
so you're used to it.
Yeah.
So if someone got pulled out on a rip current, as a surfer, you would go out there.
I was a lifeguard up there.
Interesting fact, I didn't know about you.
My whole occupation has been on the water.
And he was in the Coast Guard,
Oh.
which was...
Merchant Marine, commercial fisherman.
So you're very comfortable around the water. So,
Yeah, I doubt if I could swim anymore, but
yeah. No, I'm sure you could swim. It'd come back to you. So,
I always said I could side stroke all day long.
well, what's surfing like today? Are you out there as you were?
As I
or-
was. No. The water, I've always lived by the adage, never surf water colder than your age. I've surfed around ice.
Yeah.
And of course that doesn't hold true today because I'm 65 and I'll surf down to 55. If it's not comfortable, it's not fun.
Okay, so you're not out there in a wetsuit.
Yeah,
Oh, you are out there in a wetsuit.
but not winter time. And not when there's a lot of current, because current makes for too much work. And if it's not fun, you better be getting paid for it.
Yeah. Do you find that it's a skill that you never lose?
It's like riding a bicycle, sort of.
Do you see that the crowd out there now, do you see a younger group of kids coming in and like vying for a position? That's what I was told, that everybody had a
absolutely.
position and everybody kind of fought for the position.
It's kind of always been that way.
Okay. But are you...
But back when I was young and surfing, there were no old guys surfing.
Oh,
Because I started the year surfing came to the East Coast
okay.
in the early 60s.
So there were a lot of you that came during the 1960s.
We're a tribe.
And do you think most of you, I mean, do you see a lot of the same guys that were the original group that stayed here? I mean, they made it their home. Do you keep in contact with
No.
the people that you surfed with in your early years?
No,
or-
because you can't break into a local crowd easily.
That's why I wanted to ask you too, how hard it was to be accepted by the surfing community already.
It takes a while.
You just got to know them, or how did you you won their respect?
And it's not like it's like anything. You got to break in. Don't come in like you own the place. You may be local, but you'll never be native.
So how long did it take you to feel that this was your home? I mean, did it take you years, or did you feel like
Oh, right away.
right away? That's pretty good. That says a lot for the community.
Actually, we weren't accepted from the beginning. We were from New Jersey.
And that's a bad thing?
That's a bad thing.
So if you...
Can't you pick out a New Jersey person down there?
No, not really. Do you remember, and this will probably be my last question on your surfing, unless you want to tell me anything about it, but do you remember anything that was significant that happened while you were surfing, any injuries or anything that you're proud of? That you
Proud
remember,
of?
The wave you caught, or can you describe what it felt like? And do you have a favorite surfing story?
No, not really. On any given day, it could be the greatest day. I mean, I hate to be evasive, but it really...
No, that's all right. Someone told me that one of the things that they remember was that they would drive the rip currents out as a way to get out to the.
That's standard operating
Is it?
procedure.
See, I'm not a surfer, so I'm like, that's
Right.
like, whoa, that's.
No,
That's pretty dangerous.
You always look for breaks in the way. You always, because the rip is your river route. It gets you out there.
How about sharks?
Sure.
Did you just paddle a little faster,
Or not at all.
or you just
You're not part of their diet. Anybody who gets bit, I won't say anybody, just about anybody who has ever been bit by a shark, they were a mistake. Nobody gets eaten, they get spit out. But of course, there's damage, and if you can get to the beach without bleeding out, I mean, you're going to survive, because they don't want you.
But you never saw that down here.
I've never seen anybody bitten by a shark.
In this area.
Anywhere.
Oh.
Well, YouTube. Did see somebody die. Surfer. The lighthouse.
What happened? Was he actually surfing, or?
Well, he's paddling out, and the rip sucked him through the jetty. You know how the jetty's all
Oh,
broken up
gosh.
down here?
Yeah.
And they have spikes there, and he got swept on one side, and the board got swept on the other side. And he has his leash on. So the current's so strong, it's sucking you down because the board has more buoyancy and is getting pushed. Actually, nobody saw it happen. Everybody saw the board, we call it tombstoning, because it's attached to the leash and there's so much pressure that the board, all you see is the board going like this, and here's the water level. And then,
So the board's almost perpendicular
yeah,
to the surface of the water,
yeah.
and the leash this gentleman, it was attached to the gentleman, but he was on the other side of the jetty.
Yeah, there was so much current that the board had more buoyancy than he did. So the board was forcing up and sucking him down. And does that make any sense
Yeah,
to you?
it does. So he drowned.
Yeah. Ryan Langowski was the first one to get to him and got him freed and got him on the beach. But
So there were people there that were witnessing it, but they didn't know.
waves were good.
Waves were good. That's why people were out there. So there was,
He was
really
from out
nothing.
of town.
And he didn't know about the jetties, because that's what I heard. The jetties are very, very dangerous. You have
Sure.
to be a good surfer to know about the jetties to surf
But you
around.
use the jetties too.
Because of why?
That's your river out.
Because it creates a current, where you can.
Current runs along the beach. It's the jetty and it goes out.
Was CPR attempted on
Mhm.
and he was already gone.
Too late.
It must have scared everybody, really.
It's freaky, yeah.
Did everybody just kind of go home after that, or I mean that's pretty.
Sort of.
Yeah. Kind of makes you want
It
to go
puts a
home and
damper
think.
on the day.
Well, it does. I mean, it kind of makes it realize how dangerous it can be.
People also
You know.
went back surfing.
Well, the other thing I wanted to ask you about is that you have the honor of being the caretaker of the cemetery that's in your
When
front
we
yard.
bought the lot, this was an abandoned, overgrown cemetery. You didn't know it was there. I mean, people knew it was there, but you couldn't see it. And we just took it upon ourselves. Where we come from, Cape May is a very historical town. And we appreciate history. That was one of the reasons that we wanted to become. We sort of volunteered to be caretakers, and we cleaned it up and fenced it off. And
So you put the fence around it.
yeah.
And then, so then you went in and cleared it out, exposed the tombstone markers. Are they, what are the
We
tombstones
pay 'em
made from? Are they like a concrete material?
Granite, whatever they make.
They were granite?
Yeah.
And you can still see names inscribed on the tombstones?
Mhm. There are other tombstones. They used to make them out of cedar. Well, over time they dissolve away. You can still see one on the other property next to us.
It's a cedar marker that you know
Mhm.
that somebody is underneath there.
Mhm.
Do you think that all the remains have been identified in this cemetery?
Quite sure not.
Okay, so Do you ever see family members come by to visit
Not really. Every once in a while, Danny brings some people around.
that they think that their ancestors are buried there?
Right. Hey, Danny, when I'll see Danny pull up with people, I say, oh boy. And I'll go out because Danny starts telling stories, and I've learned a lot.
Do you know why this area was marked as the graveyard?
Probably high ground.
And whoever owned it must have given permission, or...
Well, these all used to be big plots of land, family plots. Everybody intermarried, the Pharaohs and the Barnetts, and I think I told you this, do you know the name of the street?
Well, the name of the street you live on is Flowers Ridge.
Right. Now most people assume it's because, it's obviously a ridge, so it's high ground. And people assume there were flowers on it. No, there was a family named Flowers.
So it's named after a family.
Yes. I think there's a Polly Flowers is probably buried in here someplace. She married into I forget the Barnetts or the Pharaohs.
So really, this is a family cemetery. It wasn't really a public cemetery.
Actually,
it's a family.
most of the cemeteries you see are family
Or
cemeteries.
family cemeteries. I think that says a lot about you and Betty taking care of that cemetery. Do you think there are ghost stories attached to that, or?
There is a ghost story attached to it. There's the ghost of Flowers Ridge, the fiddler of Flowers Ridge Road. People would come down the road and they would hear fiddle playing, and they could never find out where it came from. They don't know who it was, but they think it's a ghost, and this is the only graveyard on the street, on this road, so they think that the fiddler of Flowers Ridge is one of these guys. Never heard it.
Well, what do you think it is? Do you think it's a true ghost story?
I think it's an urban legend that got passed down.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the other reason I want to interview you, and this is, I have some other questions I want to ask you, but this one pertains to music. You brought with you, when you and Betty moved here, the gift of music to this community, and I know you play bass.
Well, that's kind of far-fetched, but okay.
No, I think that's true. I've heard you play. What other instruments do you play?
I play guitar, but I call myself a bass player. I'm proficient in the bass.
And did you learn here?
And I'm a hack on the other instruments.
So the bass is your favorite, what you think is most proficient instrument?
I am a bassist.
Okay, you're a bassist.
Who plays guitar and a little bit of piano.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you play piano.
Don't read music.
Where's your piano?
In the music room.
All right. Where did you learn to play bass? I mean, as a kid, or I mean.
Actually I started with guitar when I was in the Coast Guard.
So you started as an adult
Yeah.
to learn a string
But that
instrument.
was still 40 years ago.
You just picked it up one day, say, I want to learn the guitar.
I got a Beatle book, and the Beatle book had Beatles songs and the chords written above the songs. So I learned the chords. If you learn 5 chords, you can play almost any song in the world, including Bach and Beethoven.
And what chords are they? Like
G, C, D, F,
E, right?
E, yeah.
So when you moved down here, you just brought your bass and your guitars with you, and you would play for your own enjoyment, and then you started meeting people.
Actually,
also-
I saw a sign out front of Finnegan's. Finnegan's is Heather's, saying bassist wanted. I said, I was in bands when I was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived the rock and roll dream. And then I grew up. And then I got down here. Well, let me go talk to Hal. Let me go talk to this guy.
So Hal was running Finnegan's,
He owned it.
and was he the musician that was looking for a bassist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
was a heavy metal band that played original music. When I went in and talked to them, and I said, this is not my music. I'm an Eagles, Crosby, Stills and Nash guy. I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. I did it for fun. And then I ended up, Hal and I and a couple other people, we were the house band in Finnegan's for 5 years. Every Friday and Saturday we played in there.
But not heavy metal.
Sometimes.
Did you work in your Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young music?
No, there's a line that doesn't get crossed.
Okay. Any Beatles? Did you play any Beatles?
Actually, yeah, a couple.
You did? Okay. You got some that thrown in.
But no, there was the electric band, Hal and I, Greg were in. It was a power trio. But there was also an acoustic side of it that Hal and I would play. And sometimes Elvin Hooper would come down and we'd back him up. And we'd have open mics and we would just back up anybody that wanted to come in and play.
So you started to acclimate into the musical community, and the more you played, the more people you got introduced to that were all local musicians.
So then Hal said, well, let's start playing outside in different places. So Hal and I were an acoustic duo, and we started playing all
Did you
over the
both
place.
sing?
I would sing harmonies and played everywhere around Hatteras Island.
Like, give me examples of where you played.
Oh, Rollo's, Ned Crabber, of course Finnegan's, Sandbar, Brody Dogs.
Eventually, you changed gears and played with another band.
Lady Jane and the Jives. I played with Lady Jane and the Jives. They were just getting together. And I played with them in the beginning. I said, guys, I have committed to the duo with Hal. I'd really like to be in this band. And they said, yeah, no problem. Because it was going to take a while to get it together anyway. But then that lasted a year.
So what do you plan to do next?
I have 3 different irons in the fire.
Can you talk about them, or is that still
No.
like, okay, you can talk about them, but you're excited about it?
I like to play.
Same type music, or
One project's a blues band, one project is a back to hard rock band, and the other's just pretty much a rock.
the last I know that you played was at, is it Old Christmas up in Rodanthe? So what was that like?
We've been playing that for 4 years now. That's something Elvin Hooper has done for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been doing it. You ever see the movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze?
No, should I? Does that
Well,
explain everything?
A lot of drinking goes on at Old Christmas.
That's what I heard.
And we play up in Rodanthe at the community center,
Yeah.
and there's a stage. So we get to look down at all the fights.
They really do. People break out in fights
Oh,
at
yeah.
Old Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Is that when the what is it? Some creature comes
Old
out.
Buck.
Old Buck. Does
Yeah,
he still make an appearance? Old
Yes.
Buck.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that before or after the fights break out?
Yes.
I like how you answer that. Rodanthe really is the only area that I'm aware of that still recognizes Old Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
That's true? I mean, you're more
Yeah,
history buff than I am.
Yeah.
I understand there's a radio station, a brand new radio station that's getting ready to air soon. With your music background, you would be really good. So do you have any background in radio work? It's just something new you want to try.
I like music. I like to listen and play music. I know all the local musicians. I know all the musicians. I'm friends with all the musicians. I could bring them in to do interviews and play their music. I like to fish also.
I didn't know you fished.
That's how I met him.
She's a member of the Anglers Club. I'm not.
So you met fishing?
I was working in a coffee shop around the block from a place where I was going to go fishing the next morning. I was working the evening shift, and
She worked in a seafood restaurant on the docks.
he was.
I was a drunk fisherman.
He was one of the drunk fishermen that were out back. And I was going to go fishing. My day off was Friday and Saturday, and I was going to go fishing on Friday. And the man who he worked for brought him, stumbly him, in drunk. And he said, "Betty, you going fishing tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "This is the mate on the boat. His name is Bruce." And here we are.
Wow.
The rest is history.
The rest is history. But I didn't know you fished here.
I've worked on boats all my life, so I do not boat fishing. It took me a long time to get back into surf fishing because boat fishing is so productive. And so I won't go out on a boat anymore.
So where do you go to fish here? Do you have
Same place he surfs.
So a lighthouse
Between
beach?
the post office and 8.
Are you the ones out there on the jetty? On the jetty beach? I call it jetty beach.
Yes.
Actually, I'm a light tackle fisherman. So I'll be anywhere.
So you're doing more surface fishing.
No,
You don't bottom fish. He doesn't
That's what I
bottom
mean.
But I
No
look-
bottom fish.
I look for holes where fish hang out. I don't bottom fish at all.
So can you, just for record and for me, can you tell me where the holes are on the jetty beach? Go out at low tide and look for them.
Right now, there's one right there, but it'll be gone in a week.
When you're
It's
pointing,
constantly shifting.
you're pointing right south of the first jetty, right?
Can be.
Very elusive.
The holes change.
What is your favorite lure or a jig? Or do you use live bait?
A
Or-
lead head and a worm,
Okay.
plastic worm, and light spinning tackles.
And then where do you shop for your fishing needs? Like where do you get new line, or where do you get your lures?
And I usually end up at Red Drum for
Red Drum.
convenience, or Dillon's.
What upsets you the most about living here? What is it, and can it be fixed?
Southern Environmental Law Council.
And why? Can you just?
It ain't about driving on the beach. They spread the propaganda the rest of the country. Picture a bunch of us hillbillies running up and down the dunes, killing all the animals. It ain't that way. Every one of us fishermen are environmentalists and wildlife
Absolutely.
people in our own right.
Do you think that public opinion? Do you think that can be fixed?
No, because
It's too big. They're too big.
it's too big, too much money. It's high-priced lobbyists in Washington. People making the rules have never even been here.
But in saying that, you still love it here.
Sure.
What's the good thing about living here? If you can name one good thing.
In the summertime, it never gets up to 90. In the wintertime, it never goes down to freezing. As a general rule, and statistically, temperature-wise, it averages 90, I think, three days a year. It gets every bit of 89, but it doesn't go 90. In the wintertime, it averages 7 to 10 days that it goes down to freezing at night. And never, I can't say never, because
Right,
this year's
right,
been terrible.
Right.
But it never goes below freezing.
So it's the weather. It's
That's a lot of it.
that you love.
The wind always blows. It's a shame I don't kite.
Have you thought about it?
Oh, I took lessons. I got the gear.
Do you?
It just became, it's such a production to go. I'm very lazy.
So you would have to plan, like
Yeah,
an hour or two in advance to get all your gear together.
Right.
And
It takes a good half hour, 45 minutes of prep work to rig all the lines. And I'll just grab my surfboard and go, grab
Yeah.
my rod and go.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It makes life a little easier.
I'm lazy. And that's another almost pre-requirement to living down here.
What is that?
You gotta be lazy.
When you took your kiteboarding classes, were you at At Canadian Hole or?
Actually, up in Rodanthe at Real.
Oh, okay.
If I was going to do it over again, I'd go to Thai.
How about windsurfing? Is that something you ever did?
No.
Any
Always
interest
looked
in
fun.
that?
Oh, actually, it's falling by the wayside.
That's what I understand. The kiteboarding's kind of like a new thing.
My foot caught.
So Betty, I'm going to ask you this question. What upsets you the most of living here? And you think it can be fixed?
I don't think there's anything that upsets me. I have felt.
Can you go on the beach anytime you want to?
Yeah, I can.
On any beach you want to?
Well, that doesn't bother me because I realize that that is affecting other people, but it's not affecting me, so that doesn't bother me. I hear people complain about it. Complaining isn't going to fix it. It's just something we have to learn to live with. That doesn't affect me.
Okay.
And because I don't have a business that I am relying on tourists or vacationers, none of it affects me.
Okay.
Very good point.
That makes a difference. Now, if I owned a business, I'd be ranting and raving. But I'm just a lady who's retired who still can put my chair 2 places on the beach that I really like, and so it hasn't affected me.
What do you think is the best part about living here? Have you given time to think about that?
Oh, your friends.
Your friends?
The friends here are just friends. These are just friends.
Mhm.
These are just people that want to be friends to be friends.
Mhm.
That do like some common things. Have a great
Southern lifestyle, too,
Southern lifestyle. And I've said that all along.
which is changing.
For the worst or for
Oh,
the best?
absolutely.
You think so? Do you think so, Betty?
No, I don't. I have to say that where I work, and you had asked, did I know whether it was somebody from New Jersey or not a Southern person. When I worked over at Surfside Casual right here in Buxton, the door would open and it was a Southern boy or a Southern girl. They'd hold the door first of all. They would say, "Good morning, ma'am," to you. They ma'amed you to death, but they at least spoke to you. And at the moment the doors opened, that they were youngsters from another state, mainly New Jersey and New York, they never could make eye contact with you. They never spoke to you. They didn't speak to their parents, and if they did, they were not polite to their parents.
But you're from New Jersey.
I am.
Does that embarrass you?
It does.
When we left, we never looked back.
I said the greatest thing about moving out of New Jersey is seeing it in a rearview mirror as I went over the bridge leaving. It was the reputation from people in New Jersey is just nothing positive. And last year that I was living in Jersey, I worked in a motel, and people would come in and say, "You're not from Jersey. Where are you from?" And I made a living as a waitress my whole life. I said I had to be friendly with people, but I'm just not like the northern New Jersey people or what people perceive as New Jersey people. I believe in being nice to everybody.
I grew up in a Southern culture, even though I was raised up north, so I knew what Southern culture was
Right.
compared to.
But, I mean, did you open doors for,
And
Sure.
it still does.
I mean, it's
Our
all
personalities fit better down south than they do
Yeah.
up north.
That's what I'm saying. I think this was where you were meant to live your life. You just took a long way to get there, but you're here.
Right.
You know.
I'm very comfortable here.
Well, before we wrap up, is there anything you want to say to add to our discussion? Anything about?
As I tell people, living here on Hatteras Island is wonderful 364 days a year. The other day the hurricane's coming.
And you want to expand on that? Because that's one topic I didn't talk about, was what you did during the hurricanes.
Put up the shutters and hunker down.
So you stay.
But he had spoken to, knowing a lot about the water that he does, and he did speak to a local or two who explained to him about which way the wind is blowing and how much. You'll know when you should leave. You'll know.
Okay.
And him having that knowledge made it so that the decision to stay was.
Buxton's kind of unique. You know, you've heard of the Buxton bubble.
Actually, I haven't.
Oh, haven't you?
No, explain that to me.
You've seen it on radar, how storms come and they kind of melt before they get here to Buxton. They go around us.
Okay.
Same thing kind of works with hurricanes. There's as many hurricanes. I mean, yeah, they always say hurricanes aim for Cape Hatteras, which is kind of true. But I mean, knock on wood when I say this, but the eye of the storm, there's only been a few cases where the actual eye comes over the island here in Buxton. When they're coming up the coast, they'll duck in, they'll hit land below us and go up the mainland. Or they'll aim for us and they'll catch the Gulf Stream and go around. It's not to say we don't get damaging winds. Yeah, we do get bad storms. But the actual eye very rarely will go right over the top of us.
Betty, do you remember the worst one that, since you've been living here, since it was like 2001, is there one that you particularly remember that?
Well, the house was here in '03 when Isabel hit, and pictures of the water. We have live oaks here, so there's never been water on our property, salt water on our property, so they can't sustain life through salt water. But we had the shutters up. We weren't here. We have two little holes in the side of the house where a little tree limb had hit the house. It's the only thing that has happened. A couple of years ago, we got pretty scared and put up all the shutters, and Sharon and George, they always leave, and they had left. I said when we got the dogs that we had to say that we would leave when a storm was coming, because you always see on the Weather Channel of somebody's dog that swam away. And, you know, I don't want to be one of those people. But I feel as though Bruce is very good at knowing about, he wouldn't put me in harm's way, or the dogs.
We always use ballpark figures as a category. If a category 3 is coming, we might get out. We haven't left yet, though. I thought we made a mistake not last year, Irene, because it looked safe enough. It was a 100-mile-an-hour storm, and just right there it blew up to 145.
And we had a daughter who was traveling down.
Oh my goodness.
I know. She was the last person allowed back on this island.
Just before it got here, it dropped right out.
So your daughter
100.
made it here?
They got stuck here.
As they were driving through Waves Verdanthe and Salvo, boards were hitting their truck. They shouldn't have been traveling. They went to a wedding on a Friday up in Hampton Roads. They came down, and they should not have. But they came and stayed here. For 9 days they were here. They had to leave on the ferry. It took them 11 and a half hours to take this short little ride home.
They came down on the road, but the road wasn't there when they went to go back.
We had put up the storm shutters. That's one of the investments that we put in this house. I know it's a manufactured home, but to be safe, even though it's not up on stilts, to protect the windows, we invested in storm shutters right away. That was our first investment. And I don't feel 100% safe.
Right,
but I feel
it's
pretty
false
safe.
confidence to say it, but the rule of thumb is never let the wind inside the house. That's what blows houses up.
Okay.
The wind gets in and...
So you have every door and window
Oh, yeah.
covered.
Yes.
So do you have an escape route?
We can't open the
The
front
two
door.
doors.
So you can,
sure.
I was wondering how you locked yourself in.
That panel there and the back door panel has shatterproof glass in it. The storm doors
Hurricane
don't.
glass.
Hurricane glass. So those are the two things, but all the other things are completely shuttered tight. Nothing can come in.
Wow.
We have different.
I saw it on the Weather Channel, this hurricane film you can get. And they did an article on the Weather Channel that they shot a 2x4 into a window that had this hurricane film on it. Didn't break the window, but it took the whole window, broke it out of the frame, and
Wow.
took the window.
So that's what we put on the doors.
Oh, okay, that's good. At least you know the doors won't be flying away.
And then all the panels are on the windows.
I just feel as though I guess because I always lived.
There's a lot of false confidence.
Once you're here though, and if you leave, you can't get back. That's one of the things that makes me say.
That's why most people, each storm, more and more people won't leave because they have left and couldn't get back.
And by the end, the water's in
And
the
they don't
house.
have a second house to go to.
Yeah.
It's-
But where do
it's-
people go when you think about it? I mean, you know, what if you don't have the money to get a hotel for 3
You hear
weeks?
so many
and-
people living in a motel on the mainland for that
Yeah,
length
but
of time.
that who can
And that's
afford
a
that?
lot. That's a lot. Well, you go into debt.
Well, Richard and Barbara, they left the one year, and there was no electricity for a bunch of days, and they went and stayed in a motel, and George and Sharon were staying in a motel up there too. I want to say they were up in Greenville, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, Jordan Shire.
Yep, they both were. And
I think they're in Rocky Mountain.
oh, that's right. And neither one of them could come back, so Richard and Barbara drove to Florida to be with a cousin down in Florida because the storm went north, and they went to their kids. They didn't have electricity either. George and Sharon, I think they went to their, like George's brother's house in Atlantic Beach,
Yeah.
which wasn't hurt, because you can't get back, and you can't afford to stay $110 a night in a motel,
Right.
and that's only lodging. That isn't food.
And
Well,
we have a lot of people that say, "Oh, come stay at our house when you know the hurricane's coming. Come on and stay with us." And
But
yeah.
you know, then you've got your animals.
companies
you know?
like fish
Yeah.
supposed to stink after 4 days.
I have
Is
to
that true about family members too?
Yes.
Well, I told the kids, and we love it when you come. We love it when you leave.
Yeah, they probably saying the same thing.
And it's not bad.
Yeah.
But when Sam and Aaron were here through Irene, when it happened, we could get to the end of Lighthouse Road, and we could almost get down to the old lighthouse site,
Mhm.
and we couldn't go any further. So,
Can't go up to 12 because the water's running down the street at 12.
so we were all held captive for 9 days here at the house. It was so much fun. We had such a blast.
Oh.
This side of the street's higher than that side.
Because
I mean-
we're on the ridge.
Donna used to
Yeah.
tell us all the storms would come up to the street from that side.
Now who would say that?
Donna and Jeanette.
Oh,
owned the
okay.
campground.
Okay. All right.
But it would never cross over.
That's good.
And again, it's not if, it's when. It's not
Will you
if we
leave
get hit
through
by
all-
hurricanes, when we get hit.
Yeah.
We wouldn't do a manufactured home again. We could do pilots, but we couldn't afford it when we did it.
Well, what would be if this is a manufactured home? Why is it bad? I don't understand the
It's
construction.
cheaper.
Is it the foundation that you're
No,
concerned
it's
about?
tied down real well. It's low to the ground. We're not on pilings.
But
like
you're on a
most
ridge, so
places.
that's a good
Right.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not built. I feel like little pig, blow your house in.
Right.
They could blow in our house.
Okay.
They couldn't blow in George and Sharon's house. They couldn't blow in your house because you guys, it was stick built. We saw the people build the house, that sort of thing. We didn't see these people
And
build a
Sharon
house.
and George always leave, and they don't know it, but we have a key to. They know we have a key to their house, and
If you have to, you would go there.
there was one storm. I rigged up a line between the side door and their door.
Really?
So worst case
You
scenario,
wouldn't float away?
we could get to their house.
You're anchored to their house.
So I have to say that Joe and Lenny invited us to come and stay at their house, and they said I could even bring these two monsters.
That was really nice of them.
That was
Yeah.
because they've never ever had a pet in their house.
That's true.
They gave us the whole bottom floor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, Joe, like, I'll have the carpet cleaned up. She Betty, just come, bring them
Because that was the storm where it was coming hard, and we were saying, "Uh-oh, did we make a mistake by staying?" Because by the time all of a sudden you're out of time, you can't get away if you want to get
Yeah.
away.
Because up in Rodanthe, it's closed, you know.
Did you ever go to Joe and Lenny's
No.
house? You never got.
We just decided to stay.
No, because again, the Buxton bubble storms.
Yeah.
Just all of a sudden,
But I do have to say that
Isabel came in. It came in south of us, so things didn't happen right
Not here, but south of us.
Yeah, look at Hatteras Village.
Right. They got cut off.
and 3 years ago, Irene destroyed everything in Avon. That was Irene that we had put all the storm shutters up. And we were, maybe even the year before that, there was one before that. We shuttered everything up, picked everything up in the yard. Everything was, I was a little concerned that year. That night,
What was up?
he said to me as we were shutting everything up, he said, I want you to look out back at this edge. He said, it's not going to look like that tomorrow.
When we wake up.
Now you scared me. Now I go to bed that night, reaches in his pocket. His driver's license. So what's that for? He says, they can identify the body. Put it back in his pocket and went back to bed. I said, you are so rotten.
He would have protected you. I'm sure he would have. Anything else you would like to add? I'm glad you brought up the hurricanes. That was on my list to ask you. So, anything?
I bet that's a pretty standard answer around here. Is category 3.
We're leaving. I think this is your home. I think you've proven that with picking this lot, doing your ancestral research, and you have family that in this area touching the border of your property. So I say welcome home, you guys.
Thank you.